So, hey, everybody, this is Dr. William Clark. You probably know me from the Dr. William Clark podcast. I am in the middle of doing another case study, a fundraising case study with a new nonprofit, and I have Divine Touch House of Healing on the line, specifically their executive director, Anika Dennison. Did I say that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome. So for those of you watching, just really quick, this case study is going to focus on how do I get my hands on a building or property, revenue to pay for it. And I'm going to be sharing some thoughts with Nadia. We're going to have a conversation. We're just bringing you inside of the conversation. And so I hope you guys learn a few things from what we're getting ready to talk about. And Nadia, got your permission to share this with the family online?
Yes, you do.
Awesome sauce. All right, cool. So let's kind of just back up for a moment. It's always interesting for me when I hear organizations talk about they want to get their hands on a building, particularly when they're newer, because I think that is the next phase a lot of people think is necessary for them. And given the business that you're in and the program you're running, like I totally get why you need to jump to that phase. So I want to give you some alternative ways of approaching this, because to go from being a newbie to raising serious money is going to take quite a bit of effort, and it's not going to be as quick as one might think, right? So we're trying to go from
Right.
zero to $500,000.
Right.
Not saying it's impossible. There is a pathway to it, but I just want to kind of walk you through what that could look like. So there are three things I teach my students when it comes to raising major money. The first thing I teach my students, and first secret I teach my students, is the third fastest way to raise money is through a clear strategy. So we got to have a plan, a strategy, some steps that we're going to have to outline and define to get us from where we are to where we want to be. The second secret that I teach is performance is the second fastest way to raise serious money. So if you're going to get some money in the door, you're definitely going to have to establish a performance culture within your organization, particularly since it's new. And we'll kind of walk through what that could look like. And then the third secret and the fastest way to raise money is through relationships. Obviously, who you know matters, and what they have matters. And so
Mhm.
we're going to talk a little bit about that. So specifically, you're trying to get to this space of having your own space. I want to walk through what your example could look like, what your
Mhm.
situation could look like, utilizing these three secrets, and we're just going to jump into that. So let's kind of start from the beginning when it comes to a strategy. At this point, you mentioned that you're getting a few donations here and there. There are a couple of things I think you need to establish when it comes to generating revenue and creating a culture of revenue generation for your organization. Number one, it is important for you to tithe to your nonprofit organization. It is important for your board to tithe to your nonprofit organization. And it is important for your friends to tithe to the nonprofit organization. However, your friends, we're going to ask that they tithe 6 months to meet you and match you for 6 months. And when their time is up, either they can continue or to rotate off and give other friends and family an opportunity, and keyword an opportunity, to support your organization. The reason why I'm specifically calling this out is because you want to begin to invest your money in these early stages into your vision. By you investing, you are telling the world, you're telling potential donors and funders that you believe in this. And it's particularly if you're a newbie in a startup, this is kind of like, especially from a grassroots perspective, this is something you want to prove that the business means a lot to me and I want to invest in it. The reason I want your board to tithe and I want friends and family to tithe with you is because it gets you in the mode and in the space of asking for money in a comfortable way. And so you want to begin to start to ask for serious money. That journey begins with asking people to make a commitment to you and your vision. Tithing represents 10%, right? Tithing is a term typically used in the faith space, but I'm using that as an example of what you want to start to ask people to give. Can you commit to give X percentage over the next 6 months, 12 months in commitment to this organization? I am giving this amount of money and I'm asking all of you to match me, right? And so the tithe is about discipline. Tithe is about representing what it means for people to give. And when you get comfortable asking people to tithe to your organization, you are then starting the journey of becoming a fundraiser, a revenue generator, a marketer, a seller. The executive director should be in that space of marketing, selling, and generating revenue for their organization. If you're uncomfortable doing that, then you're going to have to hire somebody to do that, which can cost you a lot of money, right? And so, given where you are budget wise, that might not be the best place and space for you. So you want to start to establish revenue generating habits within your organization so that you can start to get to this building you want to own. Now, when you get this money in the door, we want to move to secret number two. We want to start to get to the performance space. Now, I don't know if you deliver any of the services that you mentioned, but assuming that you do, the next space around performance is to not purchase a building, but to actually use the revenue coming in from the tithes to put you on a stipend, right? You want to get the board in position and you want to get them used to paying for talent and paying for your services, okay? The next thing you want to spend money on is to lease space that is available to nonprofits specifically. I do not want to see you in a generic commercial space where you're paying rent that is escalating well and above beyond your budget, right? So you want to have a budget for how much you're bringing in. You want to have a budget for how much you're willing to spend. You want to look around your city and find office space that is specifically designed for nonprofits, particularly space that can accommodate the work that you are doing, the privacy, the secrecy, whether it's a one-person office, a two-person office, a four-person office, that you can configure to fit the needs of your clients and provide the secrecy and the privacy of for your clients. If you cannot find any of that space in your community, then you want to look for office space specifically designed for startups. Okay, this is very specific because the revenue or the cost of a startup or co-working space for startups is relatively cheaper than traditional storefront costs. So you want to stay away from the storefront. You want to stay away from traditional commercial spaces and look at either nonprofit space where you can get your own private office or a startup office. And how are you going to pay for it? From the tithing. Remember, your tithing. Remember, your board is tithing. Remember, family or friends are tithing. And that consistent revenue starts to position you to afford certain things in a way that you could not afford before. Look at this. The tithing is much greater than the $2,500 you can get from Walmart. While the $2,500 will help you, it may cover a couple months of rent. But think about this, it's going to run out and you can't apply for it again until next year if you're allowed to. But if you're able to bring in 3, 4, 5,000 a month just from tithing from your core supporters, that $2,500 really is nothing in comparison to the annual revenue you'll be able to generate if you're bringing in 5,000 a month. And if you're bringing in 5,000 a month, that's 60,000 a year. $60,000 a year from zero. Wait a minute, that's a little different because you're starting with zero right now. So tithing has a core principle tied to it. And if you are on a stipend and your board is beginning to establish a pay scale with you, that's $60,000 covering you and covering your office space starts to look a little different. And let's say you want to hire other therapists that are going to come in and provide services to your clients. You can begin to pay small stipends to them to provide services so your center is operating around the clock. This is how you start the journey. Now, what you're also doing by tithing and getting your office space at an affordable rate, that includes like electricity, gas, water, and everything that you need to pay for. And typically, the office space is going to be pretty beautiful. You're also starting to establish performance, right? Results. You're starting to establish a client base. You're starting to establish a schedule, an outcome, right? And so when you start to see one client every 30 to 45 minutes and you're open, let's say from 9 to 9, and you and maybe a couple of the people are on staff getting stipends to provide services, that tithing starts to look a little different because it's paying for office space. But also look at this, you're serving clients throughout the day, and that's what a 12-hour day, which means you have the possibility of serving 12 clients a day. And if you serve 12 clients a day at 365 days a year, minus a couple of days for holidays, you're serving over 4,300 clients, or you are making available 4,300 hours of service. When you divide that by the actual number of clients you serve on an annual basis, you may in fact be serving several hundred people a year as a newbie. How are you affording this? off of the tithing, off of the commitment. And what happens at that point is when you start to serve hundreds of people a year, you now can get the attention of major funders who are looking to fund specific programs for veterans who are in recovery, single mothers who are in recovery, teens who are in recovery, LGBT community members who are in recovery. This now you're starting to tap into something really special because funders have their special segmented groups who are dealing with recovery and addiction, and they need programming, they need support to help these folks get out of whatever addiction that they're struggling with. And when you are able to say, we have served 250 people year over year, and we're looking for funding to support addiction recovery, you're talking about six-figure money now. You're talking about programming resources that will help you get over the hump. And now what you were paying yourself and your staff gets exponentially multiplied by hundreds of thousands of dollars, where you now can take a full salary and benefits. You can now have full-time staff. You may be able to afford multiple office spaces instead of one now. And get this, the tithing doesn't stop, because the tithing is a commitment. It's between you and your individual donors to say, hey, I'm committed to your vision. With that additional $60,000 coming in with tithing minimum, you want to begin to invest in other things, such as, get this, buying your own property. Now that you have rent revenue coming in to pay the basic salary of you and your staff, that tithing commitment from your donors starts to look a little different again, because 60,000 over a 5-year period starts to look like, let me just do the quick math here, starts to look like $300,000, especially if you're investing it and having compound interest hit it, which means that you can start the process and the journey of saving to buy your own building cash. You can buy your building as a lease purchase with the owner held mortgage, or you can get a traditional mortgage and put money down, right? So now we are kind of establishing a kind of a pathway for you. And this leads you into my third secret, the fastest way to raise money through relationships. I encourage you, during this season, you want to build relationships with your individual donors. These are people who are tithing to you. You want to build relationships with your clients. These are people you are serving, healing, helping, restoring. You want to build relationships with major funders, people who are funding specific programs relative to the specific population that you're serving. Build those relationships, strengthen your strategy, strengthen your performance, strengthen those relationships. You will have a building, but I recommend you not purchase a building now, because you cannot afford it now. You don't want to get into a building, have a grand opening, blast it all over Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc., and then 6 months later you have to close your building, start all over from scratch, and risk being discouraged. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Trust me, it is not fun. So I recommend you fall back just a smidge, begin to get revenue coming in. Then you want to go ahead and start leasing space that is affordable. And then you start building your strategy, your performance, and relationships, and you'll start to see that revenue coming in and opportunities to actually get your space. So with that being said, you can go ahead and unmute your line. Want to invite you into the conversation. Kind of pause there and tell me, how is that sitting with you? How is that feedback sitting with you?
It sounds really good. But I do have a question. As far as me doing my services, am I doing them on the clients that I would be serving in my rehab center? Or am I just doing like any clients that want a Reiki service or a meditation service and things like that? Like who
You
might...
have to make that. You got to make that decision. It sounds like you have a
Okay.
for-profit company too.
I do. Yes.
All right.
That is going to be linked to, Divine Touch. Yeah.
So that can happen. You can do
Okay.
that, but you want to
Okay.
distinguish services provided for free to a certain population group, because you need to track that data for the
Okay.
purpose of raising money from your individual donors. Why am I tithing to you, Nadia? Because I'm
Okay.
serving, for the sake of argument, veterans who are coming back home, who have defended our country, but they're struggling with addiction and they cannot afford. And I heard this from a veteran a couple weeks ago. They cannot afford what I offer, but they need my services.
They
I
need
want to
it.
provide
Okay.
it, but I think you all can help sponsor X number of sessions if you commit for 6 months at this giving level. And what that
Okay.
also does, when you specialize or identify certain target populations, you then can look at funders in your area that
Mhm.
serve and create funding programs for that population you're serving. This is how
Okay.
you begin to bridge the gap between the for-profit and the nonprofit. Now, there's a much more complicated response to that in terms of how you structure it. But
Right.
at the surface, that's how you can make that
That's
happen.
how you do it. Okay. Okay. All righty. Well, you gave a lot of information. That was really good. I
All
appreciate
right.
it.
So, with that being said, I just want to take a moment. One, thank you for allowing me to share this with the family. For those of you watching and listening who have heard a part of this session, I'm going to stop the recording process because I do have some other things to share with Nadia offline relative to our organization. But if you're in that space where you want to get a building, please replay this guidance I gave to Nadia because I think it's relevant to every one of us who are starting out. Nadia, thank you for being a good sport and allowing us to just hear a little bit about your story and for
Mhm.
allowing folks to share in this guidance that was given to you.
Well, thank you. I
All
appreciate it.
right.
Okay.